Trump is on trial in New York for allegedly enriching himself through financial fraud. So grab yourself a Trump steak. It's time for an America Uncovered Deep Dive. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Buckle up, folks. Trump's in legal trouble again. Funny how, after decades of being a businessman, most of his legal problems began after getting into politics. Trump is on trial in New York. This is just one of many, many trials in store for him. They're trying to prove that Trump knowingly submitted inaccurate financial statements with the intent to defraud, reaping over $100 million in the process. If you haven't been following media coverage of the case, I envy you. It's a mess. The mainstream media just can't stop talking about every single minute detail about Trump. Like how Trump folded his arms and shook his head, and how he called in a massive McDonald's order to the New York City courthouse. Talk about meticulous reporting on the things that really matter. Now, since this is a civil case, even if he's found guilty, Trump won't go to jail. But it could be a huge financial blow to Trump. New York Attorney General Latitia James is not a Trump fan. She is a Democrat, though. In fact, when she got the position in 2018, she said, as the next Attorney General of Trump's home state, I will be shining a bright light into every dark corner of his real estate dealings, and every dealing demanding truthfulness at every turn. And she's been investigating Trump since 2019. You can see her giving Trump a death stare in the recent courtroom footage. Wait a minute. This trial isn't a circus. It's The Office. Sued Trump in 2022, alleging years of financial fraud, accusing him and his family of having falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars. She put a number to that inflation last month, $3.6 billion each year. By allegedly doing this, Trump was able to get bigger loans from banks. Trump then used that money to purchase properties like the Trump Golf Club in Miami, Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago, and the old post office building in Washington, D.C. Any profits from those, the Attorney General is arguing, were made off lies. James is hoping to permanently ban Trump and his family from serving as an officer or director in any New York corporation, bar Trump and his Trump organization from entering into any New York real estate acquisition for 5 years, and pay up to $250 million. And things seem to be going James's way. Last week, before the trial even started, New York State Supreme Court Judge Arthur Engoron, also a Democrat by the way, found that Trump, his adult sons, and 10 of his companies were liable for persistent and repeated fraud in a pretrial ruling. He's the same judge who assigned an independent monitor to oversee the Trump Organization's financial statements last year. Engoron said Trump's defense had repeatedly made patently bogus arguments defending the company's process of valuing properties on financial statements that Trump used to get loans and insurance policies. He also claimed Trump was living within a fantasy world, not a real world. If Trump did live in a fantasy world, it would probably look something like this. Here are some examples Judge Engoron gave. Trump claimed his triplex penthouse in Trump Tower was 30,000 square feet. It was actually closer to 11,000. Trump's defense team argued the calculation of square footage is a subjective process that could lead to differing results or opinion based on the method employed to conduct calculation. I'm pretty sure there's only one way to measure a square foot: by pixels. Engoron also said Trump claimed Mar-a-Lago was worth $739 million, but according to a Palm Beach assessor he spoke to, it was worth only $18 to $27 million. Which is strange because most real estate insiders say it would list for $300 million. This is consistent with Forbes, which estimated the property was worth $325 million. So they both fudged the numbers a little. But that was enough for Engoron to revoke Trump's New York business licenses, including the Trump Organization itself and numerous LLCs connected to the company. This means that Trump will have to hand over his Empire State properties like Trump Tower and the Trump International Hotel to an independent third party, otherwise known as a receiver. That's right, A single judge simply decided that Trump had to give up his property before there was even a trial. Engoron decided that no trial was needed to determine the claim at the core of James's lawsuit. Okay. I didn't think that happened in America. Cool. Is that even allowed? Can a judge treat Trump as guilty before being proven innocent and dissolve Trump's business without trial? I'll tell you after the break. Welcome back. So the government has seized the property and business of a prominent opposition candidate without a trial. Is that legal? Well, apparently. Keep in mind this is a civil case. When you think about the right to a trial and innocent until proven guilty, you're thinking about criminal court cases. Legally speaking, civil court cases are different. Trials aren't always required for civil cases because trials are only needed to resolve disputes. If both parties give the judge all of their evidence and the judge sees no dispute, then there won't be a trial. According to the United States courts, the overwhelming majority of civil cases are resolved prior to trial. That's because of summary judgment. A summary judgment is a decision based on statements and evidence without going to trial. It's a final decision by a judge and is designed to resolve a lawsuit before going to court. Well, there's no way that could be abused. A summary judgment is granted when there are no other facts to be tried. All of the necessary statements and evidence are already in front of the judge and there's no way to obtain more information. By cross-examining witnesses, for example. New York District Attorney James basically asked for a partial summary judgment, arguing that the state had already proved that Trump and his accomplices had committed persistent and repeated fraud. She used New York's Executive Law 6312 against Trump, which the New York Times says is a law used to take on corporate giants. Historically, the law has mostly been used against corporations, but individuals have been caught up in its net. It enables the Attorney General to sue if a business or a person has engaged in repeated fraudulent or illegal acts or otherwise demonstrates persistent fraud or illegality without needing to prove intent or financial harm. It's a pretty low bar. Engoron agreed that the law applied based on evidence that Trump overvalued his assets, hence why he made the ruling against Trump before the trial last week. The reason why Trump is in a trial now is because Engoron is now deciding on additional penalties based on 6 other accusations. These include falsifying business records, conspiracy to falsify business records, issuing false financial statements, conspiracy to issue false financial statements, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. A trial is necessary for these claims. They require proof that Trump knew he had false information and that he had the intent to mislead. If James is successful in proving everything and getting the penalties that she wants, Trump could not only pay up to $250 million, but he might have to put his assets in the hands of independent third-party trustees and prepare an audited statement of his finances for the next 5 years. He would also be barred from acquiring real estate or loans in New York for the next 5 years, as well as being barred from serving as an officer or director of businesses registered or licensed to do business in New York. However, there are some issues with James's claims. For one, there are no clear victims. Trump paid his creditors. Trump's defense team contends that there was no default, there was no breach, there was no reliance from the banks, there were no unjust profits, and there were no victims. It also argues that banks and insurers know that the statements are estimates. They're not designed to be absolutes. And in the world of finance, that's true. Trump's attorney gave an example where Deutsche Bank valued Trump's net worth $2 billion less than Trump did, but still gave him a loan. Had any bank that loaned to Trump felt they were being cheated, they could have sued. But they haven't. Instead, the state is suing. Why? Even Judge Engoron agrees. He said defendants correctly assert that the record is devoid of any evidence of default, breach, late payment, or any complaint of harm. But he says that is completely irrelevant. He pointed to Section 6312 of New York's Executive Law, which I mentioned earlier, saying that the Office of the Attorney General of the State of New York need only prove that the statements were false and misleading and that the defendants repeatedly or persistently used those to transact business. Yes, even though there were no victims, Trump's estimates were definitely lies, even though the banks never felt that way. But remember, when the judge accepts a lowball estimate of Mar-a-Lago off by several $100 million, that's not a lie, it's an estimate. One that just makes Trump look as bad as possible and allows for the state to seize someone's property. Sounds kind of familiar. Trump has always bragged about being a self-funded presidential candidate. The lawsuit seems to be aimed at hitting Trump where it hurts the most, in the money. That's why he's claiming it's election interference.
As you know, we're not entitled to a jury, which is pretty unusual in the United States of America, so...
Well, that's not true. Trump never asked for a jury. More precisely, his own attorneys waived off the right to one. It's not clear why they did that, but there are some theories. Given that New York is a pretty blue state, Trump's attorneys probably thought that there was no point in getting a jury that'll likely hate Trump's guts. But Trump is basically making this trial a 2024 presidential campaign stop. And it seems to be going well for him. He's polling above not just his GOP primary opponents, he's also polling better than Biden. So 2024 might see yet another Trump versus Biden. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. If you want to learn more in depth about how desperate people are to brand Trump a criminal, then click on this video. And support our work by clicking on that orange button and throwing a little change our way on Patreon. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.